Tanzu is an application platform that allows you to commit code, and it gives you everything.
Tanzu is an application platform that allows you to push your code into an environment, into any environment.
Can I say feature-rich environment?
Yeah. And you can also mention that it's Cloud Foundry or Kubernetes.
Okay. Yes, I do want into because it's secure, it's observable. You have your backing services. I love a board where there's less and less room for my face. I'm going to zip up my shirt so that gives me the texture room to write. Can be Kubernetes or Cloud Foundry. And since you mentioned the 4 R's, I don't like leaving an acronym untouched. So let's quickly say what they are, which is replicate, repair, repave, and rotate. I got it.
I can drop that. You don't need me. Come on. You don't need me on the call. Those are the 4 R's. Yeah.
Excellent. So to end this, let's recap everything we've talked about. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
Great. So the way I do this on when I've done it in the past is you've spent all this time teaching me all this stuff. So now I'm going to say it all back to you to make sure I have a clear understanding of everything you've taught me.
Got it.
So the first thing we did was talk about before Tanzu, in the before times. We talked about the different upgrades that happened in terms of how to make applications better. And at first it was all about physical infrastructure. So it's like one application per machine, and then we got the virtualization layer, and then we got containerizations, but all that evolution was infrastructure driven. We talked about monoliths into microservices. But in the end, what companies want is to deploy applications faster. And that gives a major business advantage. A lot of times in this fast-paced world, the best products aren't the ones that actually are the successful ones. Instead, it's the fastest ones. So, but with all of this infrastructure-driven upgrades, this made for a very challenging environment. So we talked about challenges for operations when you have a huge number of workloads running and you're trying to manage for more than thousands of workloads. Security costs, performance, uptime, physical infrastructure. So there's so much complexity, a wild amount of complexity. Regulation, policy, multi-cloud, so much to worry about. And then developers too, maybe aren't having, their experience can also be improved. So there are many different development teams. And then in a lot of organizations, all these teams are coming with their own ways to containerize their images, to do their CI/CD pipelines, how they're going to integrate with the main infrastructure at that company. And if every team's doing it differently, it's not consistent. So again, we have issues with policy and regulation and security when every team's doing their own thing. And that's the stage that we set. Does that sound good so far? Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. I would add just one thing about the challenge is that one of the things that makes like the application move faster into production is that microservices architecture. So in a monolith, you had to wait, or you need to basically stop all the application to upgrade it. In a microservice, you can do that just for one microservice without affecting anything else. So I think that was the key. The application side of things, that was the key for that evolution in technology. That, as I said, that was the first time that developers pushed a new technology and architecture into the industry, into the world.
So at first, like this first level of virtualization into VMs became more about maximizing the use of physical infrastructure, bin packing, I believe they call it, right? And then later it was the monoliths to microservices that became more about making it so apps can be deployed and upgraded much more quickly. but that comes with a lot of complexity. So Tanzu's mission is to accelerate the application path to production. So this is done through abstracting and through simplifying. And consistency is key. Consistency is everything. So back to this problem of many teams, every team's doing their own thing, doing it differently. If we can help teams be consistent, if we can help provide that layer of building what they need to build and connecting it to the company's infrastructure, then we can provide consistency, and that's going to unlock a lot of benefits, developer experience being one of them. So to tell this story, we talked about the journey that a code takes from a developer's laptop all the way into production. So we talked about code first, that's the developer codes. Then the next thing we need to do is build. And so with Tanzu Platform, that build is going to happen into an OCI image. OCI stands for Open Container Initiative. So as part of that build, we're needing to test the application, test the code, include the code's dependencies. We have some infrastructure concerns here, like operating system and certificates. The consistency across the builds is critical for reasons we've already discussed. And Tanzu specifically uses an open source project called Build Packs to do this. So there are opinions that are incorporated here, but companies can include their own opinions as part of, they can make their own builder as part of the build packs. So once the build is done, now we have our OCI image, then we can deploy the code into any OCI compliant runtime. But before we actually do the deploying, we need to write all the configuration, all the manifest file. So there's a lot that goes into this too. There's a lot of complexity here, including, we talked about ports or resource guarantees, environment variables, handles to connect to different services, anything like that. This has traditionally been developers to have to worry about, but Tanzu can generate this config according to best practices. And we said that's probably going to be like language-specific best practices. So then the application, the build, the image we built, plus this configuration gets packaged together and versioned, and it's part of a Carvel package. And Carvel is another open source project that is a suite of composable DevOps tools. So we built it, we packaged it, now we're going to deploy it. And we deploy, as a developer, you're like, I just want to deploy my application into this space. You might not know what a space is, but you know what? You don't need to know what a space is. That's how it's meant to go for the developer experience. If you want to, I'm sure you can learn. But if you don't want to, if that's where your interest stops, so be it. And so the ops person is the one who actually configures what this space is. So like, what infrastructure is it deploying to? Does it have mutual TLS? Does it have like an ingress? And what's the ingress controller configuration? They might add certs, they might add cache, they might add MySQL. They could do all kinds of things that are absolutely specific to this particular application, has what that application needs and nothing more. So it's going to have a light footprint too, just the amount of footprint needed. So that's a space, and altogether this part of it is called Tanzu App Engine, this experience and having the isolated environments for different applications.
I'm just gonna add that all of those capabilities and configuration can also be created as part of a profile. And then that profile can be applied on one application or more, depends on like, we've talked about secured application, right? A secured application can be a profile of secured application. You can also think about profiles like production and development, different profiles with different capability set, or a PCI compliant profile that allows you to have like, all the different things you need for PCI.
Makes so much sense. So if we have like an application or several applications that need extra compliance and regulation, we can have a profile set for that. versus our marketing landing page that is a low stakes application. It can have its own profile too. Cool. So that makes it a little easier to manage, to set up across different applications. So now we have it deployed into the space, but maybe the application needs a particular backing service. So that's where step 4 comes in. So from the developer experience side, the developer just binds the application into the service that they want. And the developer can see as part of their interface, possible interfaces are CLI, API, or the UI, which we'll get to. But the developer can see as part of their interface what different backing services are available in their particular space. And then it's an easy bind command to be able to bind their service with a particular backing service. And then again, the ops person is the one who configures everything in the space and has configured the backing service. And the backing services are all available through a services catalog, and they're secure by design. And these services can run in Kubernetes or Cloud Foundry or VMware VMs. So then this took us into a place where we talked about the Tanzu Hub, because we're talking about different interfaces now. So you do have API and you do have CLI, but Tanzu Hub is the center of the Tanzu universe. So this is where all these integrations can be seen and visualized and customized, and different personas get different experiences as part of the Tanzu Hub. So we could look at Tanzu Hub from an observability standpoint, from security standpoint, from a cost management standpoint. The developer has their version of Tanzu Hub, which will show them logs and CVEs and bugs and health. And the an app operator persona might have their own version of Tanzu Hub, where they see the latest commit on their app, performance across services, policies. So lots of people can get customized views of exactly what they care about in a UI and a web portal experience called Tanzu Hub. And then finally, we have our application deployed now. It has its backing services. We can view its performance and cost and security and everything else. But eventually, that application is going to need to be updated. And so now we're at step 5. So we can scale, upgrade, stop, start, promote, restage, all of the above. And we have a lot of granularity here and stuff we can do. We can have it auto scale, or we can scale on our own. We can manage traffic for stopping and starting and upgrading. But we talked about opinions a lot. And we talked about I first got an opinions discussion when we talked about that English controller is specifically an Istio English controller. And you said, yes, there are some opinions in terms of what tools have been chosen. Some are customizable, many aren't. And Tanzu has, as part of simplifying, Tanzu has made some choices. But then we did talk about there's a lot of things you can customize. But the things you can't customize are more along the lines of what personas see what things in Hub, or what else did we talk about?
Yeah, we've talked about, first of all, when we go back into opinions for a second, Cloud Foundry is more opinionated than the Kubernetes stack. We need to be acknowledged of that. So even when we talked about the application engine or the space, it's a bit different. You have a space in Cloud Foundry. It's a bit different in the way that you're addressing that space. But let's take the Kubernetes side for a second, which is less opinionated than the Cloud Foundry. Why? The reason I'm saying it's less opinionated is because you can run those different steps underneath your own pipeline management. You can run that in Jenkins, or with your GitHub Actions, or with your GitLab, or anything else that you have. And you don't have to use the entire path, right? Of course, we will suggest you will take the golden path to production and use it, because that will make sure that you will have the best experience and the best value. But if you want now to fix one specific things, let's say you want to fix your build, you have 1,000 pipelines, you want to get consistency, and you want to have better security, and you just want to take the build, you can take that underneath your pipeline today under Jenkins or whatever, and you will have the value of build regardless of everything else. So that's where you have like the freedom of, just pick and choose the pieces you want, not inside of the different open source projects.
That's wonderful. So, in the end, Tanzu is an application platform that allows you to have your developers to have a really lovely experience to push code into a feature-rich environment where you can do all sorts of things. It's built on consistent foundations, which unlocks a lot of potential. And this can be either on Kubernetes or on Cloud Foundry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Did we do it? Is that the end?
I think so. It's just a beginning, by the way. If you want to, put it like that, we've scratched the surface nicely, I would say.
Yes, a good overview. And you and I, we intend to make some more resources together in the future to unpack all of this a little more.
Yeah,
but sure. Today has been loads of fun. Thank you so much, Oren, for sharing your time and expertise.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast as usual.
Bye. Thank you.